Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's great to be back. I'm joined by Jerry Taylor and Kevin Graham for the Monday Bulletin. Welcome back, gentlemen. Now, Jerry, you joined me for a wander around Paradise a couple of weeks ago. It was a great experience for us both. And this morning, a wee friend of yours, Simon Weir, joined me for a walk around Celtic Park.
What a boy.
He's brilliant. He is.
Oh, I love the big man. I've only ever met him once as well when we were doing a documentary, but he's spot on. I love the guy. He's so charismatic as well. Knows his stuff too.
He does.
So I take it it's an hour of Simon talking and you just walking then,
A wee bit, but I quite liked it. And I've just been offered the opportunity to take a wander around Paradise with someone else. And I said to Jim Orr, who pitched the idea, I says, we're going to have to walk around the stadium twice, but all for the betterment of it. Superb, really enjoyed it. It's a great way to start a Monday morning. And what happened was Paul Muldoon joined us at 8:30 in the car park and handed over an incredibly generous gift, which was a Scott Brown framed signed jersey for wee Jamie Tierney. The link is underneath the video. You guys never fail to amaze me with your generosity. Jerry's talking about meeting Simon Weir once. Paddy Lavery has seen you already in Still Game last night.
Oh, this is the thing. I can never live this one down, right? I was an extra, I was a Ned in Still Game, right? I get the piss taken out of me all the time for this one. So I remember, it's my biggest regret. Not being in it is brilliant because I've been in Still Game and Scott Squad now, right? Two of the best shows in Scotland in recent times. But when I did it, right, so it's Smoke in the Water one, you know, when Jack and Victor go down the Kelvin on the boat for Victor's birthday. So I'm one of the Neds that's chasing them and I kick the fence down and all that. So the director's like, when you run up to the edge of the water, look really tough. But I did this stupid cartoon thing, right? See if you watch it, I run up to the river and I'm like, and my mates still do this to me if I'm getting upset. They go.
Well, the thing is, Jerry, last night I watched the movie for the first time. It's been on my watch list for a long time. It's On the Waterfront, and I think a lot of people tuning in will have seen it. You've just got to look at Marlon Brando after the movie. He hated his performance. I think it went on to win about 8 Academy Awards. So didn't be too hard on yourself with your performance as a Ned in Still Game. Don't be too hard on yourself.
To say I've been in Still Game is a huge thing, so I'm chuffed for that. Cheers, Paddy.
Totally.
Thanks for bringing that one up, mate.
Absolutely. Sorry, Kev.
It's not that, Jerry. I can actually see a wee Ned running up and gone.
Aye.
And running away again, I can actually see that. Aye. So run up and or you see them when you're outside the football and there's the wee gang of ultras walking up and they're all going like that to you. And you can, if you actually look at them, actually blow them a kiss, they'll run away. So
do you think Scotland's kind of, I don't feel as safe now that the Neds have died off. They always they're always there, you know what I mean? It's all Spice Boys now. The Neds were always there to take control, but
Spice Boys. Superb. Well, there was a couple of Spice Boys walking about Celtic Park today. It certainly wasn't Simon Weir and me. But yeah, catch that at about 6 o'clock once it comes in, nicely edited, and we'll get it up on the channel. Last week it was 6:15, there or thereabouts, you know. It's International Week. Kevin Graham, I know that in the past you've been a big fan of Scotland's international team. It's not for everyone. What's your thoughts during a period when there's no Celtic playing like this particular period, whereby obviously we keep an eye on the injuries, etc.? Are you right into the international football during the break, Kev?
Obviously, I have got two eyes on Scotland, because I do want Scotland to do well, and I did used to go to the Scotland games, but my Rangers supporting pal that I go with, that was the only reason that we started going to the Scotland games, because it was the only game of football that we could go to together. And so a couple of things have happened in the last couple of years where we just haven't managed to do it so much. But I still go up to his house and watch the games. And I must admit, for about 35 minutes on Friday night watching Scotland, I thought I was watching Brazil, no Scotland. I think when you just hear a commentator, I wasn't listening to the Viaplay commentary. I didn't like doing that. I didn't like listening to commentary where somebody's trying to give you an opinion. I just so I go into another channel for somewhere else in the world where it's quite clearly a wee guy sitting in a studio. He's got his notes in front of him and he's just telling you what's happening in the game. And he's got some fun facts that seem to come up. And one of the fun facts was if certain results go our way, Scotland's way tomorrow night, Scotland will be the first country to qualify for the Euros.
That's mental, isn't it?
And I'm going, what parallel universe are we in? If that actually happens, Scotland will be the first country to qualify for the Euros. I'm sure there's dinosaurs going to appear at a volcano somewhere and start eating us.
There's a lot of strange things happening in the world, Kev.
That happens,
to be fair.
That's weird. So I enjoyed the Scotland game on Friday night. On Saturday, I went to James McGrory Park to watch St Roch's.
Is that what the cap
what the
is?
hat is, right?
Yep.
I would recommend anybody to go there. It's a great wee day out. Was made to feel most welcome by the old team that go to watch them. And the old fella standing next to me was telling them how he was fleeing because he had a couple of fireballs before he left the house. And it was a great day. Everybody made you feel most welcome. St Roch's were robbed. They shouldn't have got beat 2-1. The Shotts Bonaccord goalie. I mean, Shotts Bonaccord, that's just a big name as well in like junior football, eh?
And Juice.
Aye. He had 3 great saves, and St Roch's lost with the last header of the ball. So it was a good wee day out, and what a great wee community club. Isn't it there until you actually see it with your own eyes? You hear the stuff that they do in the community and all of that, but when you actually go into it and see what they're doing, it's magic, eh?
Well,
I'll be back, definitely.
Absolutely, Kev. And the thing is, there's a couple of things I just want to clarify for people who are tuning in, because obviously people tune in, Celtic fans tune in from all over the globe. So I think we should give a wee bit of perspective on exactly who St Roch's are, but also what on earth is a fireball, because I don't even know. So somebody tuning in from Costa Rica might be struggling on that one, Kev. What's a fireball? What is it?
It's a shot that they set fire to.
Oh, dear. Don't do it at home, ladies and gentlemen.
I think it's a whiskey. I think it's a type of whiskey.
It's an aniseed type whiskey liqueur. Trust me on this one, I had an issue with it back in the day. You get them in wee bottles as well, you get them big, and it's almost like, those atomic bomb things you used to get as a kid. You would stick on, it would burn your mouth.
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
Some folks set fire to them, like Zambuca.
Dear me. I mean, maybe I'll live a sheltered life. I've never had a fireball. Certainly not before I got to the football.
And this old fella was mine or Jerry's age. This old fella was about 73, 74.
Oh, fair play.
And like...
If the old guy that had a couple of fireballs before the game is tuning in, I hope you're all right. And with regards to St Roch's, obviously, we've got an association with them insofar as, Kev, that during one of our charity weekenders, we decided that they would be one of the beneficiaries of some of the funds raised, and they were able to use that for the mental health group, which was Rock Talk. Part of the community work that they do, like you were saying there, Kev, but they're pretty much a cult club. They've got a cult element to them. You've got like the whole kind of, they've been called the St. Pauli of the junior game. I know they're no longer in what used to be the junior game, but they have got that vibe. They've got the great graffiti at the stadium. There's a brilliant history between St Roch's and Celtic. The stadium's called James McGrory Park for obvious reasons. We signed the great James Edward McGrory from St Roch's. And we, as a platform, a Celtic State of Mind, are absolutely privileged to be involved in their centenary game, which actually takes place on the 15th of October up at James McGrory Park. Now, that particular game, what's your involvement? Our involvement is we have to pull a team together for a Celtic select. Now, Jerry, you're a goalie. You're a goalie. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing with these games, Jerry, get your goalie top, get your gloves.
No. This was my Player of the Year trophy when I played Sunday League a few years back. Goalkeeper.
Oh, you're in. Because
my defence was so bad, I had lots to do. So thanks to my defence that season. That's when I played for Christina's Bar. Alec McHugh was the manager.
Delighted you kept that. I'm delighted you kept that, Jerry.
It's the only thing I've ever kept. Every time I move, it's the first thing I do because it's the first thing I've ever won on my own merit. So
fair play.
Carry on.
Be proud. We're pulling together a team. I'm not obviously going to be doing anything beyond contacting players and asking them to be involved in it. But if you can imagine, like the Masters at the weekend there, I know Colin Watt is a big fan of the Masters, and ex-Celts. Kevin and I were at a Sixes, very similar tournament a few years back, Kev, with some of the same players, actually. I think Jackie Mack was playing because he nutmegged Mike Alone. But in any case, any ex-Celt who still is able to, because I know a lot of the players might have dodgy hips or knees or ankles or whatever, we're going to be contacting them. We're going to be pulling together a Celtic Select side, which will involve others like Big Simon Weir, for example, and obviously Jerry Taylor, who is the goalie. After showing me that trophy, there's no question it'll be yourself. Or,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, who else are we going to ask? Let's be honest.
Thanks.
What other goalkeepers could we ask? That's a good question. Let us know in the comments section. Ex-Celtic goalies you want to see playing. Well, you know, you can have a half each. You can have a half each. Oh, we could actually, or maybe not. But that's another story. Anyway, we're talking about ex-Celts. The strangest thing happened on Friday, right? It was the strangest thing. Now, Kevin, you've been involved in the affiliation for a long, long time. You know the work and the dedication that goes into running Celtic supporters clubs. And I know that there's a lot of people tuning in today from all over the world who will be attached to a CSC. There's a great Twitter page. Go and get it followed, Celtic Bars, where the guy who runs that is actually compiling a book of the CSCs and the bars that they're attached to. I think he's got like 500 and odd Celtic supporters clubs active, Kevin. He's got the history of them. It's an incredible endeavour. You know what it takes to run a bus, Kev, and run a supporters club. So on Friday night, I was absolutely privileged to be up at Dundee, and it was a Dundee Celtic Travel Club, and they were celebrating their 75th anniversary. I mean, can you imagine that? 75 years that club's been running. They launched it in 1948, which is, you know, probably the worst season in Celtic's history. We almost got relegated. We only saved our skin on the last day of the season. They launched the supporters club. It's still going strong. And when we went up, they had organised for Tosh McKinley and Frank McAvenny and Peter Grant all to do their bit, which is always great fun. And you know who else turned up just to say hello and be part of it? Albert Kidd. And he was just sitting there with the people, just sitting there having his meal and having a few drinks. And obviously I introduced them to the room, and he got a great reception, as you would expect. But it reminds me, Kev, of that game that he played, because he did eventually wear the hoops in Australia for a bounce game. George Best played for Celtic that day, as did Willie Wallace. And Albert Kidd finally pulled on the hoops. He must be the greatest ever Celt that never played for Celtic.
Well, I'm lucky enough. My first major memory of watching Celtic is the 85 Cup final. Even though I had been at games before then, the first one I can really remember from start to finish is the 85 Cup final. Then my dad took me to Love Street that day, mainly because I think my mum wanted me out the house, and mainly because I didn't think he thought that we were going to do it. And that moment when the Celtic end goes mental, and the goalkeeper turns round will lovely me for life. And me forcing my dad onto the park as well, because my dad, I'm going, can I go on the pitch? My dad's going, I'm not taking you on the pitch. And the boys that were with my dad, Davy Anderson and that, went like, get him on that pitch. Come on, this could be once in a lifetime. Get him on that pitch. So the big photo, see how there's the famous photo with everybody on the pitch with the scarves in there, eh? I'm in that somewhere. I've never actually picked myself out yet, eh? So Albert Kidd is one of my favourite players, because he gave me that. He gave a 9-year-old Kevin Graham that moment.
By the way, Kev, have you ever written a poem about Love Street? Have you ever done a Love Street poem?
I have not. No, I have
you
not.
Should.
No,
you should,
because it contains a certain player.
Yeah, that's true. But
that I need to try and get ruined, but
without naming him. He that shall not be moved. Right, here we go then. Can you tell me?
Not be moved. He was moved, all right.
I had named. Who did Albert Kidd replace when he came on as a substitute at Dens Park? Who did he replace? Tosh McKinley. And he was in the room on Friday night as well. See that? Brilliant. Gerald McEwen is in on the chat. Good evening all from the Philippines. It's great to hear where you're tuning in from. Fantastic to hear from you, Gerald. And we've got Kevin Mullen. Afternoon, Acsom. Absolutely buzzing for Champions League next week. We're going to be talking about that. Still think we're a couple of players short, but hopefully can make Celtic Park a fortress again. We were up there, as I said, we were up there this morning. It's a great way to start your week. David Boyle, it's great to get back to Celtic after the break, although the meltdown kept us amused. I want to talk about that because whilst we've been keeping our head, everybody else seems to be losing theirs. Keith Oakton is watching in Plymouth. We've got David Boyle from a rain-soaked Carlingford. We've also got Dale Boy 109 from sunny Inverness. And
Inverness.
did you? Was it sunny?
No.
No, really.
No.
By the way, I'm bringing this one up because we have got a huge amount of people tuning in from Birmingham. So maybe we should go and do a gig down there, an Acsom live night down in Birmingham. And James Love, hail from the Philippines. Brilliant. Great to hear from you all. Let us know your thoughts. Are you enjoying the international break? Would you rather it hurried up and finished so we could get on with the real deal of Celtic? Or do you take what Kevin said there about Scotland and you say to yourself, well, if Scotland can punch at that level, why can't Celtic? Kevin, what's your thoughts?
Well, you're talking about international break there. I quite enjoyed this one. Obviously, after beating Rangers, it's great, eh? But it gave me a chance to actually go to a junior, go to watch St Roch's,
Yeah.
and go. I'll come back here definitely. But that's what the international. I would recommend anybody. The international break football. I know we're all busy with families and stuff like that, eh? But I mean, there was guys with dogs at St Roch's, and there was guys with Waynes at St Roch's. You can take the Wayne way and give them a hot dog and go to a lower league game and just go support your St Roch's. I know my local club, eh? But go and try and have another wee level of football, eh? And see what's actually happening out there, because there's a lot of wee clubs doing a lot of good things, eh? And that's so the international break for me gave me a chance to do that. So it's been quite a productive international break for me. But then we're right back into it. I mean, the Scotland-England game's tomorrow night. It's a friendly. Oh, it's not a friendly when it kicks off, but as soon as we're 2-0 doing it becomes a friendly. Then we'll like move on to the weekend against Dundee. Then it's, as you say, the Champions League's round the corner, and I don't think anybody. We've won at Ibrox, right? And that's our hardest domestic game that we've got. That's nothing if you're going to Feyenoord.
Mm-hmm.
That is doing there, and going to Feyenoord is up there. Even though Feyenoord have got a smaller wage bill than us, you look at Feyenoord's European record over the last couple of years. I've watched them playing Roma a couple of times in the latter stages of European competitions. I mean, latter stages, they won knockout games. We haven't won a knockout game since 2004. Going to the De Kuip is going to be the hardest game that we've faced this season. And nobody should. I see folk going like, I will get a point there and that. If you get a point there, I'll eat both your kneecaps, Paul. I'll even eat Jerry's.
You'll beat my kneecaps.
I'll even eat Jerry's.
My kneecaps. Kev, I've only got one, so it'll not be a great meal, to be fair. Davy Scott, welcome back to the show, Davy. Well done, the Celtic Masters. Whoever did the flooring should be carpeted, if you pardon the pun. Unlucky the girls. We'll be talking about the Masters, we'll be talking about the girls. But I'm going to go back to the point Kevin made. I know that Kevin is more fanatical about the international team than I am, in terms of watching Scotland, following Scotland, etc. And that's fair dues. Everybody's got their own kind of priorities when it comes to that. You know, international football, I just don't know if I've got room in my life for it, Jerry, but that's fine if you have. But if they're punching at that weight and they're doing so well, Kev's saying they might be the first nation to actually qualify for the European Championships. Astonishing. I must admit, I got into the kind of Euros. I remember Mexico 86, but I got into international football Euro 88. That was a tournament where I was right into, I loved that Netherlands side. I loved the Ireland team, beating England, the whole thing. Russia even, it was a great final. Hulit's bullet, Van Basten scoring from an impossible angle. Loved international football back then. But as time's progressed, it's just Celtic for me, just Celtic, and that's it. But if the Scotland team have shown that we can do it in a certain way, Jerry, even when Spain come out and say that isn't football and, that's anti-football, that's because we beat you. Steve Clarke has shown that you can come up against superpower nations of football. You can come up against teams that are a lot stronger and have got far more technical ability, but you can still compete. So I think there is a bit of learning to take from that.
Yeah, definitely. I think for a good few years there, I had no interest in the national team at all. I don't know if that was just because we were so poor or because there was that many different competitions and ways to qualify. I just get confused with it all. I wasn't enjoying it. But I have to admit, over the past few months, Steve Clarke's really started to kind of pull me back in. You got to be proud as well. I'm a proud Scotsman, so I'm proud to watch Scotland play. I love to watch them win just now. It's great because you never know when it's going to happen again. So I'm just enjoying the journey. But if you look at the team they've got a young team, and it's quite exciting. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to win a World Cup, but just to qualify and get a few away days to another country, do you know what I mean? Just enjoying the atmosphere, because the Tartan Army does it better than anyone else. So I think I'm more attracted to being part of the Tartan Army than actually watching the games, if that makes sense. But
What I'll say to that, Jerry, I have been to Hampden quite a few times, and in certain situations, if it was Celtic supporters behaving certain ways that the Tartan Army behaved, we wouldn't be treated so friendly with the police. There's certain behaviours that are. I've been to games and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And
really?
If this was a Celtic game, they boys would be huckle and they wouldn't be having a laugh and a joke with the police like the way it's actually happening. That was one thing I do. But I get what you're saying about the Tartan Army as well. And there's one thing I'll say it, I really enjoy about watching Scotland is the lack of Rangers players. Makes it far easier. Makes it far easier to actually do.
Man, no, carry on, sorry.
You enjoy the idea of the away days, the camaraderie, the community, being part of the Tartan Army. And I guess, Jerry, for many years, they were the long-suffering Tartan Army, and that's probably all they had to look forward to was the trips and the crack and all that kind of stuff. And everything else that goes on tour, Kev. I don't know what goes on tour, but because I don't think it's spoken about that often. But yeah, that's probably all they had to kind of look forward to. But now they've got a team as well to be proud of. So great, superb. I mean, Stevie Clarke's been linked to the Celtic job over the years. I don't think it'll ever happen. I don't think he's got any great needs or aspiration to manage a club side in Glasgow. I think you just need to look at his comments. The job he done at Kilmarnock was unbelievable, but the job that he did previous to that, if you look at what he done, not always as the head coach, but the job that he did when he was at Chelsea and Liverpool and West Bromwich Albion, when he went to Kilmarnock, for me, there should have been no surprise that he did what he did, because he showed his credentials. He proved his credentials at the top level. He wasn't the focal point. He wasn't the main man, the manager, but he was part of a management team. He was the manager at West Brom, obviously. He was a part of a management team that was successful. And he's obviously picked up a lot of that. And he's crafted a team. Often when people are saying, why are you playing this individual or that individual? Sometimes he's playing people on the form that they've given him rather than the form they're given to their club at that particular time. He's been very loyal to certain players. But what we've seen from that is the development of a proper side. And I've always felt on an international level, it's about trying to get the club side mentality and camaraderie. I think Jack Charlton used to get that. I think Terry Venables got it at England, and that's why they had a decent side in the kind of mid-90s. To get that club side mentality and camaraderie, rather than it's just the best 11 players who are playing the best at that time that's available to you, because that doesn't always work, Jerry. It's all about the blend and being able to work as a team, and not just on the park, but away from the park as well, so that, you know, you'd run through brick walls for each other and all that kind of stuff. I think Stevie Clarke's got that.
Oh, I definitely. And can you imagine, right? You imagine Scott McTominay was playing for a team that he played every week for, what his performances for Scotland would be like. He's coming in without any match practice and that. He's been on the bench. He's been outstanding. What a driving force. And John McGinn, the midfield as well. I'm excited by the Scotland team, but I do miss Celtic. I don't like it that Acsom's not on at the weekend when there's a national game on either, by the way. So
I did think about covering the Masters. I know. I thought about covering the Masters.
Really sorry, mate, for cutting in. I thought it was really good of Kilmarnock to lend the pitch to the Masters for the weekend, though. That was really good.
You know what it reminded me of, Jerry, is there was a time, I don't know when it was, but there was a time when a lot of the clubs were just initially getting the Astro, we'll call it Astro, we know that's not the right name for it, in place. And it was obviously a cheap version, Kev. And I remember the first game, obviously Livingston got it done all at the kind of same time. They all kind of got it at the same time. And I think it was, they were looking upon it to say, right, they might be able to cut down on the groundsman's work and maybe save some money that way, and then use the pitch all week or all month round and rent it out and make money that way. I think that was the reason, Kev. Was that the reason that they would have done it? Because there couldn't have been any other reason. It's not going to improve your playing surface.
I can only talk from a Stirling point of view, and that's what they done with Old Anfield. That was the reason. The council took it over, laid a plastic pitch so they could make money for it. That was the only reason that they done it.
because it was lying there from one home game to the next, not getting used. So they thought, right, let's start an income stream. And I remember they did it at East End Park, and the company that laid the turf, they were part owned by Ian Rush and some other player, and they turned up, and the first game at East End Park was against Rangers, and a Rangers fan invaded the pitch and did a Klinsmann. He was naked. That's the other bit. He was naked, and he ran on the park. He done a Klinsmann, and the picture of him getting kind of escorted off the park, grazed from head to toe, and obviously there wasn't a police hat to hide his modesty, but it was blurred out on the Dunfermline Press's pages. But the reason I bring it up is it was terrible, and you could actually see the movement of the carpet, as it almost looked like one of the carpets with the tiles, you know, the carpet tiles that you could lift up. So to see that at the weekend was astonishing. Even more astonishing, though, Kevin Graham, was Kelvin Wilson's comments that we should sign Gary Hooper. Seriously. He's 36 in January. He's basically been out to grass for the last 4 years when you look at his career path. I might have seen the purpose of that when he left Sheffield Wednesday at the age of 30, 31. But he's way past it, isn't he?
He is way past it. But I was talking about Anfield there. I was going to show my knees on the podcast because I've still got a scar from where I fell on in Anfield.
Please
but
don't.
I only bother because it's 12 o'clock and folk are having their lunch. Oh, come on. These Masters tournaments are for a certain reason, and the players are playing in them for a certain reason. You look at Charlie Mulgrew. We spoke to Charlie Mulgrew. Well, Paul, you spoke to Charlie Mulgrew recently. He admitted his body's completely gave up. Gave up last season at Dundee United. He went and trained. He went and trained with a couple of teams in lower divisions. His body still couldn't handle it. Hooper wouldn't last. He's been away from professional football for 3 years. He wouldn't last half an hour in a training session under Brendan Rodgers before he would be puking like Paddy McCourt on a Monday morning. So it wouldn't be. These things always. Everybody says, "Oh, he could probably still do a job. He could probably still do a job." You go and watch these charity games. One that you played in, Paul, in Oakley, and the best player on the park that day was what was his name? Charlie Muller.
Charlie Miller. He was always the best player on the park.
Charlie Muller was the best player in the park that day, but he admitted that he was actually fitter then than what he was when he had last played for Clyde. That's what he admitted. But I didn't look at Charlie Muller and go, "Oh, you could still do a job for somebody." No, you were up against fat
clowns
guys.
like me.
I'm not. Well, you called yourself a clown, right? I'll take back the fat bit. Clown
Cheers.
will do. Up against guys who have paid for a game. No wonder he's looking great. Brian McClare looked great. But you could actually see with the touch, you go, well, you guys have played at a higher level.
Of course.
But they're not going to come back and do a job. I think Kelvin Wilson was just maybe pulling her legs there and go, aye. I mean, who would you rather have, Kyogo or Gary Hooper? No, that's a question. In their prime, who would you rather have, Kyogo or Gary Hooper?
No, the thing with Hooper is when we signed him, he was one of the players identified by Neil Lennon, not by a scouting or a recruitment team. Lenny loved him when he was at Scunthorpe, and he wanted to sign him, and he had absolute belief in him. He was a brilliant goal scorer for Celtic. There's no doubt about it, Kev. I think he left too early. I think he should have stayed at Celtic for another season or two. But in terms of technique and all-round ability, I'm going to say Kyogo. Jerry, what do you reckon?
I think definitely Kyogo, but Hooper, I was gutted when he left. Do you remember that right hot streak that him and Anthony Stokes together? Mm-hmm. And the two of them were just absolutely on fire. What a partnership. But Kyogo's been up there all on his own. You know what I mean? He's been getting the goals. He's a different league, and I don't think some people still realise how amazing he is until we lose him. If we ever lose him, because he might stay forever.
Let's hope he does. Yeah, he can
That's
do a Nakamura and play until he's 42.
I'll play the devil's advocate here. Hooper scored in the Champions League.
Well, who was it against again?
Spartak. Was it Spartak? He scored a weeker that made us qualify to get absolutely battered for Juventus, for Juve.
But I remember the treatment. Remember the treatment of the defenders with Hooper against Juventus. Remember all that carry on, Kev, where they were kind of fouling him, but not fouling him. They found a way to foul players without actually breaking a rule. It was just bizarre.
that's because they had scouted the referee.
Yeah.
They scouted the referee. No, this is true, Jerry. They
Oh,
scouted
really?
the ref and actually realised the ref didn't give Hodding in the box.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the defenders done.
Oh,
You watched
right.
that game back. That was the game, was it not, that Effie Ambrose come back from a 36-hour flight and was thrown right in, and he was rotten. But to be fair, there was mitigation because obviously that travel had really hammered him and he should never have played. And if you ever speak to any of the guys in the team, they say Ambrose should never have played that game because of the travel. That
Juve game, after we saw what we weren't streetwise enough that night. What we should have done was, after we saw what they were doing, it was fire a corner kick right on top of Buffon, who was in goals at that point, and Big Wanyama should have just went right through him and just went, "You're not getting away with this."
Nah,
That's
exactly.
what we should have done. We weren't streetwise enough.
You're right. We weren't, Kev, because it's about in-game management, isn't it? It's about, right, okay, we've been caught on the hop here, but let's do something about it within the game. And that's going to be key against Feyenoord in the first game. I agree with Kevin. I think, there's the obvious jump in class from domestic to Champions League, but I also think that Feyenoord, you can't just look at the wage bill, as Kev pointed out, and say we pay more money to our players. We've got a bloated squad, Jerry. So when you look at that annual wage bill, you've got non-contributing players, and if you get into double figures, even if they're on 10 to 15 grand a week, it's an absolute fortune every single week for players that are not contributing to the squad. And I think that's a big issue that we've got at the moment. It's going to take more than one transfer window to put it right. There is loads to talk about. We do want to talk about the fact that it's very calm at the moment at Celtic, Jerry. We're in the international break. Kev has pointed out rightly that we go into that international break with a sense of, we've just beat Rangers at home. We beat Rangers at Ibrox with a weak inside. So it kind of galvanises you as a team and as a fan base. It might have been all different, but you know what? We got the win, so let's not even contemplate that. But other clubs are losing their minds. I said at the beginning of the season, Hearts, Hibs, Rangers, Aberdeen, there are going to be casualties, managerial casualties this season. I say 2 or 3. So we've already got Hibs, who have appointed their manager this morning. I think they announced the manager this morning. The other day there, we found out Neil Lennon wasn't in the running. They've just announced Nick Montgomery as the new Hibs boss. Hearts, I'm not quite sure what's happening there, but we will see how that develops.
I don't think there's what's happening there either.
I know, that's what it would appear. Rangers, I don't look for rumour and all that, but I've seen it on the socials over the weekend. They're going into meltdown. Aberdeen seem to be okay with their situation. But I think that's really key, though, Jerry. We are keeping the level head. We are sticking to our own game plan, our own strategy, and other people outside of that bubble can lose their heads and lose their managers and lose, for me, their whole game plan for the season.
Aye, well, a couple of things on that one. I get really excited after the Rangers game, but on reflection, when we look back on it, it's a fine line, because if we'd have lost that game, we'd have probably been on meltdown mode. Not to the extent of what's been happening on the other side, I don't think. But Brendan was under a wee bit of pressure getting into that game. It was great to get it, and I think that's going to help us kind of almost reset the brain and go, yeah, we know how good we are now. I mean, Callum McGregor's performance, especially the first half, outstanding. But have you heard the stats on Stuart Kettlewell from Motherwell about his win? Do you know, since he's taken over from Motherwell, he's only lost 2 more points than Celtic?
It's incredible. Fair play.
You need to look at Motherwell now and think, all right, maybe this isn't just a wee flash in the pan here. Are they going to battle for up the top 3 positions? I just think that's an amazing stat, and it made me sit up. I heard it on a podcast the other day, and I thought, and it's true, 2 points since he took over. So interesting. Keep an eye on Motherwell. I think they'll be a really tough team, which they've proved already this season. What was the question again?
I think, Jerry, that sometimes if you stick to your guns, you've got a game plan, you've got a strategy, and you don't get too involved in what every other person is doing, they will eventually be derailed, because they'll derail themselves. Pop will eat itself, Kev, and that seems to be what's happening. There has been a major meltdown since the Ibrox victory. Jerry's right in what he says. The mood in the camp would have been completely different had the result gone the other way, but it hasn't. And I think on the one hand, you've got the galvanisation effect of Celtic, but you've got the meltdown of Rangers and other clubs in the league. Clubs that should be stable for me, I just don't think they give their managers an opportunity, because the manager comes in, they bring in a dozen players, they bring in a backroom team, a year, 18 months later, binned, and then it's rinse and repeat. And that's what we're seeing from other teams.
It's not even a year, Paul. I think Lee Johnson, who's just walked into another job.
I know.
I can't believe that he's just wandered away from Hibs, walked into another job. I think the average he's been at a club is 11 months, in his whole career. And he keeps on getting. He must have a great interview technique here. That his agent's got some dodgy stuff on his phone on every chairman in the 92 league clubs in England.
Maybe they just gave him the job to shut him up, because I tell you what, he went on and on and on the press conferences, didn't he? Post-match event, he spoke about everything except the game.
Maybe he just played. Have you seen my Giacomo bill this month for the clays that he buys? So
that jacket was a classic.
No, you're right. There's a seriously lack of long-term thinking in Scottish football, and that goes with the guys off the pitch as well, with regards to away fans. I mean, they've got one job: put a team on the pitch and get fans in the stadium, and actually fail at both of them. These guys, they absolutely fail at both of them. You look at Hearts last season. Hearts played 6 games in the Europa Conference League. How many of the players who had the experience of playing in that Conference League are still actually at Hearts? So you have to build time. The manager is no longer there. They've got a weird setup where the manager who was the manager couldn't be the manager because he hasn't got a wee certificate to say that he is a manager. And so they bring in a guy who, for the backroom, to be the manager and do all the European stuff. As soon as they get papped out of Europe, the manager becomes a manager again.
I know.
That's weird.
It's drastic.
Aberdeen. Right. I think Barry Robson's only won 1 game this season. If you go on Twitter, a lot of the Aberdeen fans are not happy with him, even though they've got guaranteed European football. And I thought they were great against Hacken in the first leg. I thought they were absolutely magnificent against them. But again, he's built a brand new side. But how many of that side are going to be there next season? How is manager going to be there next season? There's no long-termism whatsoever. There's no... You look at Maloney came into Hibs. You look at Caffro came into Hearts. Both slaughtered because they had a long-term plan. You look at the difference in these managers, and this is where Postecoglou alarm 37 minutes. He's replaced the Rodgers alarm. You look at Postecoglou and you look at Rodgers. They didn't talk about winning games. They talk about developing players. You look at guys like Robbie Nielsen and that, they talk about winning games. They talk about a mentality of winning games and that. They didn't talk about developing professional guys. So when they take their wee mindset down to Milton Keynes Dons where Robbie Nielsen went, he's got a brain going, right, how do I beat Motherwell? How do I beat this? How do I beat that? He doesn't go down there with philosophy to actually go, how do I develop a team that's good enough to win games of football? Doesn't matter who they're playing. And that's a short-termism. And if you look at all the top managers, apart from Jose Mourinho, because he develops a siege mentality, every one of them is about developing players. If they develop players rightly, you will win games of football.
Yeah.
If you get guys inside, you will win games of football. But these guys seem to have a bit of short-termism, as if they go, nah, I've won and all it matters. And it's the same in the boardrooms all up and down the place. That's how Scottish football is an absolute bucket case. It's a wheelie bin fire, Scottish football. And the quicker we get out of here, the better.
Do you think?
Well, sorry, Jerry.
No, sorry. Do you think, I don't know, if, see the teams below, the 2 Glasgow teams, we'll just say, do you think some of them focus too much on getting a stronger squad instead of just investing in a proper, experienced, good manager? When you look at the likes of Kelly brought Steve Clark in, all right, probably paying a bit more in wages than they ever would for a manager. He did the job. You look back at Burley for Hearts, he did the job. If he just stayed, he could have done an even better job. You know what I mean? But there was all that financial trouble with the ex-owner. I just think sometimes you've got to get the right man in, because you're never going to be able to afford these players to compete, which is unfortunate. And I do feel sorry for them because I want it to be a more competitive league. But I just think I think they're focusing on the squad too much and just get the right man in, spend a bit more money on the manager and a bit less on the team. Who knows? If it's not working, change it.
No, I would agree with that. Go for the manager first now. Obviously, with regards to the Fireballs, that's brought a lot of people coming in. Martin always knew that some of the Acsom team were Neds. So thanks for that, Martin. And Joseph McGonigal, it's like mouthwash. I think we're still talking about the Fireballs here. I'm going to try these. Martin Devine, Fireball Whiskey is what it's called. And Martin Davey, St. Roch's is a brilliant wee club. Wee Candy. Yes, we are delighted to be involved in pulling together a Celtic team for the centenary match. Franny Weldon, Shettleston boy up north, Mon the Candy. It'll be a fantastic occasion, and it's on the 15th of October. I'm really looking forward to it. Johnny Ryan, I will be asking Big Rab Douglas if he can play. I don't know what the situation will be with regards to his registration, because it's all to do with insurances, is it? Whilst you're still registered with a team. Is he still registered with Arbroath, Kev? I know that he was on the bench last season for a game, aged 50 or something like that. He is the Scottish Buffon.
He might still be registered for emergency circumstances. He's a bit like Scott Blaine, but double age. We just register him for emergency circumstances.
Yeah, and by the way,
to get rounds in on nights out.
And he's an absolute giant, by the way. Talk about, you actually see him in person with big hands he has. It's like the Kenny Everett hands, honestly. Imagine getting a backhander off at Rab Douglas. But yes, I will be asking Big Rab, because he is a great guy to be involved in that kind of thing. Here we go, look at this. Do a competition for an Acsom listener to be included in the squad. Listen, there'll be a few things happening, so that's a great shout. So leave that with us. We'll see what we can do with the St. Roch's team. There's loads to get organised, but I'm really keen to get a team together that's competitive. It needs to be a competitive team. So I'm looking forward to that as well. We're going to be talking about quite a lot of stuff coming up for, obviously, our next fixture, with a view to the Champions League after that. What the St. Johnstone game showed us, I think, Jerry, we just can't say, right, we'll get that game out the road and then concentrate on Rangers. Similarly, we can't say we'll get the Dundee game out the road and concentrate on the Champions League. We need to deal with what's in front of us. And it's not a one game at a time mentality like what Kev was saying, kind of short-termism. It's just that we need to show the respect of whatever team's coming along to Celtic Park. We need to take care of them. And there's quite a lot of things, I think, that we need to consider for that particular game. So we'll be looking through the areas of the team. Before I do that, big shout out to Paddy Sinnott, who has obviously been on Acsom several times and will be returning in the future as well. I read an article that he wrote in relation to yet another young Celtic player leaving the club, Even Easton, 18 years of age, is away to Sheffield United. And I'm just gutted to hear another young Celt is leaving the club. And I know for a fact that the Eastons are massive Celtic fans, Kev. I don't know if you know the family out in Kincardine. Massive Celtic fans. Go and watch Celtic home and away. Brilliant. And the young guy's away. He's away to Sheffield United. That's another one leaving the club before we've even seen what he's capable of, Kev.
I remember I used to go to the away days with his dad.
Yeah.
The Easton. I'm trying to remember.
Peter
Easton, aye, for Kincardine, aye. Used to go on the Tommy Craig every so often for the away games, and I remember him putting on Twitter when his wee laddie signed for Celtic, so he disappeared as well.
He's gone.
Sheffield United.
Yeah, he's gone. 18 years of age. But, I mean, there's a whole squad of them, actually, and at some point in the not-too-distant future, we'll be able to look back on all these young guys that have left Celtic in the last 5 years and say, where are they now? Some of whom will fall by the wayside. That's just what happens. Others will turn into very, very valuable players that we wish were wearing the hoop. So that's an issue, and it's one that I think Celtic are going to be struggling with. When we go into the game against Dundee, let's start at the back. Let's start with the turnaround in fortune of Joe Hart. It's happened kind of under the radar without too much spoken about, I guess. Joe Hart, in the transfer window, Jerry, loads of Celtic fans wanted a new goalie. I actually think we still needed one to strengthen that position. But, quietly in the background, Joe Hart's just been getting on with putting in the performances. A massive part of that's down to Brendan Rodgers, changing the way that we utilise the goalie. He's not having to, use the ball so often at his feet, take on players, try ambitious passes, put himself and others under pressure, concentrate on being a goalie rather than a sweeper keeper. And I think it's worked wonders for Joe Hart.
Definitely. Do you remember you called it? And I remember the exact show. You weren't even on the show at the time. It was James was hosting. I think you were on holiday. Mm-hmm. And I'd literally just said, I don't know if he's going to fit in the Brendan style. And then your comment popped up and said the opposite of me, basically, and says, I think Brendan... And you called it, and you were right. Do you know something? Did you watch that interview with him when he was recently, when he's talking about when Callum McGregor said how he's such a great guy? And he says, I would meant a lot to him. And then he says this thing, he says, I know that some people probably don't think I'm a good goalkeeper. It would be nice to hear that said about me as well. I felt like he was talking to me, you know, and I felt guilty. And I felt really bad because it was the human side of him again. And I have been quite vocal about getting a new goalkeeper. And I felt quite guilty that we were giving him such a hard time. I think he was helped by the fact we had so many injuries and we had to focus on every other part of the pitch at that point. Yeah. So the focus came off him, and maybe that's why he started playing better, because he wasn't getting pelters from the likes of me. But I think he'll be great. I hope it doesn't get like halfway through the season and he starts to, I don't know, make mistakes. But he's so much better, like you said, just getting the ball away. He played brilliant the last game. So I'm glad to have him. He's a great guy by the looks of things as well.
You know, this morning we started our wander in paradise at the Jockstein statue, 38 years, just a few days ago since he passed away. And we were speaking about that, Simon and I. And I always remember a thing that he and loads of the players that played under him used to say, Kev. It was like, he would never ask you to do anything you weren't capable of doing. Now, that sounds simple, right? But managers do that with players. And I think that Ange Postecoglou did it with Joe Hart. He was asked him to do something that quite clearly he wasn't comfortable with. That's why he ended up leaving Man City. He was one of the goalies that didn't want to be playing like, 80% of his game with the ball at his feet. Often it would just be that moment's hesitation before you knew he was under pressure, he was losing the ball. Just about, every other game, there was a heart and mouth moment because of that. All of that has just been washed away by Brendan saying, right, back to basics, you're a goalie. I want you to save shots. I want you to be a leader at the back. And I think what we've seen from that is how effective Joe Hart can be when he's just concentrating on that element of his game.
You look what Rodgers done previously with Craig Gordon. Now, Craig Gordon wasn't decent with the ball at his feet, so then Rodgers brought in Doris de Vries, who was maybe better with the ball at his feet, but he was scared to save the bloody thing. So eventually, I think that's right. De Vries got lobbed for the halfway line against Kilmarnock, eh? Then Awesome got an injury, and Craig Gordon went back into the goal. And you look at that. Rodgers has got a different style of playing. I still wanted a goalkeeper in the building because of Hart's contract situation. And that was the only reason that I wanted another goalie back in the building, was because Hart's got a year left on his contract. It's very unlikely that he's going to sign an extension at his age. He's probably wanting to go back down south and something like that. So I wanted another goalie in the building just to put pressure on him this season, but also to learn the ropes of what it's like to be a Celtic goalie, to learn of Joe Hart as well. Because Siegrist is not going to be a long-term option because of rumoured to be personal circumstances. Scott Bain's there putting the cones out or doing whatever Scott Bain does.
Being good in the dressing room.
So there's a room for another goalie, but Celtic were never going to run with 4 goalies because that just doesn't happen at football clubs. They were never going to run with 4 goalies, 4 first-team goalies anyway. So when Siegrist didn't get his move, there's no chance that we're going to bring in another goalie. But you have a look at it the last couple of games. St Johnstone, he made 2 fantastic saves against Stevie May, 2 one-on-one saves. At Rangers, he made a couple of fantastic saves as well. He's doing what a goalie needs to do. He's doing what Joe Hart needs to do for Joe Hart. He's doing what Joe Hart needs to do for Celtic. And at the moment, you've got to say, yeah, you're quite happy at that position. But every goalie's got a blooper in them, and Joe Hart's no different. It doesn't matter if we'd have signed another goalkeeper, there is going to be a blooper in him. His decision making's a bit more quicker, it looks like, at the back, especially with the ball at his feet. He knows he can actually hit it long. He hits it to the wing quite often. And if you go back to when Rodgers was first here, that's what Craig Gordon used to do. Craig Gordon used to play the ball halfway line out to the wings. And he's just doing that again because he knows that Hart's limited with the ball at his feet. But again, Hart and Gordon are probably 2 similar keepers at the stages of their career that they are. They were never sweeper keepers. They were never brought up to play that sort of way. It was like, it's that Twitter thread, is it? Goalkeepers pumping the ball up the park. Yeah, Jerry, you need to actually watch that. It's just goalkeepers just hoofing the ball up the pitch. It's absolutely fantastic.
I've never seen this. I'll need to start watching things like that again if I'm going to be.
Is it the Twitter page, Brian's Gun? I think the Twitter page is called. Check it out. Brian's Gun.
It's just like Steve Ogrizovic and guys like that just lofting. Dave Besant, Steve Ogrizovic just punting the ball up the park. You can watch it for hours.
Just win the ball. Boot it right up to the halfway line.
Two similar goalkeepers, so it's no surprise that Rodgers has sort of simplified his game because he has done it before. And obviously Rodgers has had a look at the goalkeepers there as well, and well, Hart's the best option out of them. So I'll need to modify the way that I want us to play. I mean, I think Schmeichel at Leicester was probably a bit better on the ball, but that might change over time. It might change over time once you might get to January. You might see a goalkeeper coming in January to get that 6-month bedding in period. But as I say, the only reason I wanted another goalkeeper in the building was because of Hart's contract situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we do a lot of things on Acsom. Green Licty, we're going to set you up with a fellow Acsom viewer for a pint in Gracie's. You are in Glasgow today. Anybody fancy meeting Green Licty up for a wee pint, a wee jar in Gracie's? Then let them know in the comments section. We're happy to help pull you guys together. James Love, I heard about this. I've never actually heard the commentary, but a lot of people thought that it was Walter Kidd who had scored against Dundee that day. I don't know if it was just, it said Kidd had scored at Dens Park and loads of people thought it was Walter Kidd. Oh, and Hearts are going to win the league. Unfortunately, no. The joyous scenes turned into tears for the Jambos. And we've also got the Bagels Productions. Albert Kidd apparently said, "Stick me on, boss. I always score against Hearts before being subbed on." Yeah, he's one of the guys who's written them into Celtic folklore, isn't he? We've also got Pete McGee, hail from West Sussex Riviera and Shoreham by Sea, and Colne Celt, hail from Cologne. You were very, very generous indeed with the jerseys, the badges and the stickers, so thanks very much for getting involved in that as well.
Just before you go back to that, Paul, the Albert Kidd thing, there's a guy on Twitter, Football Tweets, and he's got the 86 Love Street team all done as wee Twitter figures, and at the end it's got Albert Kidd in a Dundee top. In the end it's got Albert Kidd, and I went, I could buy that because I think that's perfect. It's got the great guys that were at Love Street playing for Celtic. At the end it's actually got Frank McGarvey. and a towel, and it's got Albert Kidd as real.
Brilliant.
That's quite funny, and I like that.
Used to love listening to Frank talk about that actually. At 2:00 today, the bizarre things that can happen. I'm speaking to BBC Stoke. They want to hear about Haksabanovic, guys, right? So let us know your comments. Let us know your comments about Haksabanovic. They're going to ask, what are we signed here? Is he going to be a success? They want to know from a Celtic persuasion what our thoughts are. So let me know. I think there's words like maverick coming to mind. Jerry's a bit of a maverick player. There's potential in there. He could go either way, couldn't he? I remember somebody, a West Brom fan, asking me about Samaras when they signed him. And I says, well, he's either going to be a god or he's going to be a flop. Because you've seen the Samaras at Man City, you've seen the Samaras at Celtic, and the Samaras at Celtic divided opinion amongst a lot of Celtic supporters. Haksabanovic, what do you say about him? If a Stoke fan wants to know what they've got here, Jerry?
That's a tough question. I don't want to badmouth bad players, but I've still got a bitter taste in my mouth with his Instagram post. I'd say play him regularly. He'll do well in your league. Don't send him back anytime soon.
Let us know in your comment section. What do you say to the Stoke fans who want to know what they've signed with Haksabanovic? Kevin Graham, what's your thoughts?
Imposter. He's like the imposter in Among Us for those who play video games. He's the imposter in the Stoke camp, and they're struggling, and he will only help them out.
Kaiser says something which I thought was a part of his game that he couldn't actually improve on. Seen milk turn faster than the freezer. Haksabanovic, yeah. I think, that bit of pace, how you see a player and you think to yourself, they had a bit of pace. It takes them to a completely different level because technically they're gifted. They've got all the tools, but they lack pace. I don't think Haksabanovic could possibly be a winger with the lack of pace that he's got. He's a tricky footballer. He's got great feet. He can cut inside. He can strike a ball. He can play a pass. But I just think that we were playing him on a wing, and you think, well, you imagine the pace and the guile of someone like Maeda and the ability of someone like Haksabanovic. What you've got yourself there is a world beater. But Haksabanovic didn't have the pace for me. So I think a bit of a maverick. It's going to be two ends of the scale with him. He could be completely non-contributing, or he could be a match winner.
I've just focused on there, Paul. Sorry. See how they used to say, could Messi date on a wet Wednesday night in Stoke? I can tell you now, Haksabanovic can't date on a wet Wednesday night in Stoke. He'll never be able to date on a wet Wednesday night in Stoke.
Well, I'll be putting all these comments to BBC Stoke later on this afternoon in that show. If anybody's interested, it'll be about 6 o'clock. When we talk then about the changes in the team going into the Dundee game, it's going to be interesting, Jerry, to hear Brendan Rodgers talking pre-match about some of the injury concerns, coming back from injury, because one of the previous interviews, he said that Hatate would be back after the international break. So you're kind of pinning your hopes on him being fit for Dundee. If he is fit, I think there's a third midfield jersey up for grabs right now. I think O'Reilly and McGregor have claimed two of them. Who plays in the third midfield position for you? If Hatate's fit, does he go straight in?
I've been thinking this all week because I was listening to he's talking about the midfield. Odin Holm, obviously, I'd really like to see. I think he's a great player. I don't think he's a bit... If he has a run of games, I think... potentially could be one of our best players. However, we've also got, you need to excuse me, I've already forgotten the guy's name that we got for Benfica, because what was his name?
Paulo Bernardo.
Bernardo. How's he been doing in training? Are we going to see a wild card? I actually don't know what our best midfield is. I really don't. I'd love to see Hatate back. I was a big fan of him. There's no denying his quality. It's a really tough one. I hate to say it, but I don't want to see Turnbull back in the midfield as a starter. Anyway, which is a shame. For some games, definitely, maybe cup games and that, because I think he does deserve his chance. But with that one game where he's dispossessed 9 times in the first half, I'm just struggling to go over that. I really am.
And these are the things, Jerry, that you might watch that game and think that Turnbull's not played particularly well, but you don't see that stat after the game, when somebody tells you about it, you think, wow, this is a team that wants to retain possession. Rule number 1, don't lose the ball 9 times and a half. And I think when that's pointed out to you, you start thinking to yourself, is Turnbull suited to what Rodgers is wanting to do? I think, we were kind of blinded a wee bit by the fact that he got that start in the first game of the season, Kevin. He played really well and he got the man of the match. But I'm now of the way thinking that if Hatate is fit, he plays. That's my view. But I take what Jerry says on Holm. I think Holm's looked very good since he came in.
It's one game at a time, hang. So we can't discount Dundee. You have to assess Hatate's fitness, how he's been training over the last couple of weeks, what level he's been training, because Celtic Park, Lennoxtown's probably been a bit scarce with guys will be on international duty, even though they'll start coming back tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You need to get minutes in his legs, whether you do that for the start or you do that, bring him on as a sub. But I do agree with you. Turnbull started the season well, and there's been a drop off. And even though he was an experienced that was brought in against Rangers, he was one of the midfield that the game still seemed to bypass him, and it wasn't a surprise when he came on and Odin Holm had a wee bit of dig about him and a wee bit more energy and a wee bit more in their face. It's just the type of player he seems to be. There is a midfield spot up for grabs, and you've got to say that has got a fully fit Hatate's name on it. But you've got to say that. But then again, we've got, after Dundee at home, we've got Livingston away and Feyenoord away. Two tough away games. But when you're looking at Europe, you wonder if Rodgers will change the formation for Europe, and there'll be 2 midfield spaces like come up for grabs, or whether he'll stay with it. He'll go to the 4-2-3-1, and somebody will sit deeper with McGregor. We thought Iwata was going to be that defensive midfielder, but that doesn't look like that's going to be the case whatsoever. So if he's staying with a 3 in the middle of the park, you've got to say it's a fully fit Rio Hatate's jersey. But on the other hand, you look at what Alan Morrison was saying on Friday. Hatate on the left hand side completely exposes Greg Taylor because his work rate is not there. And Jerry's having a go at Turnbull about his work rate and losing the ball. You've got a man who watches a game statistically going like that. The reason they attack the left hand side and Hatate's side is because he didn't work back. And for my mind, I see him buzzing about everywhere, but you've got to take Alan Morrison's word on that. Eh? So, but I think domestically, that for jerseys Hatate's. European guys, it'll be interesting to see what Rodgers does.
It definitely will be. Thanks everybody for getting involved. 1,000 strong on this Monday afternoon. Just a quick one, guys, before I bring up some comments and wrap up for the day. Abada might be injured. Who do you play on the right-hand side? I'm going for Yang. Jerry, who would you play?
Yang, because I don't know if Palmer can play out in the right, can he? And I've not seen him yet, so Yang deserves it. He's been great, I think.
Yeah, he's done well. What about yourself, Kev?
I think for what we've seen, we've got Yang and I'm sure Tillio as well as back training. It's going to be interesting because all the wingers can't actually make the Champions League squad. So it will be. There's got to be a few decisions based on fitness. But I agree with you with what we've seen. Yang deserves it. Yang deserves to actually get a wee start. Wide open space at Celtic Park against a team that's going to sit in. So you need a guy with that wee bit of carelessness and trickery about him.
He takes on a player, which a lot of our wingers don't do. They rely on speed. They rely on hitting the byline, getting the ball in. Yang takes on a player, and that's what I think he's got in his cannon that some of the other wingers don't appear to. Brian Murphy, Haksabanovic didn't really take on players. Haksa equals flattered to deceive, says Brian. Bernadette, try not to sound too harsh about him on the radio. I wouldn't, because I rated him. I actually did rate him. We did a show, Bernadette, probably November time, where I thought he was going to tear up the league. And then he went a bit quiet. I know there was injuries there. He didn't get the run of games. And I think he's been very unfortunate in that he threw the toys at the pram. I don't even know if he would have been left, if he had left the building, had he not made that Instagram post. That's why we keep going back to it. I think we'd have kept a hold of him.
I think he's one of the players, if he's happy, he'll turn it on.
Yeah.
He has to be in the right headspace because he's got the ability.
He's definitely got the ability.
And if he fancies it and he knows the manager fancies him as well, then I think he's got to be patted on the head and go, Haxa, you're amazing, big man.
He needs to have the state of mind spot on. And when he does, I'm pretty sure he'll be a player for Stoke. Jerry, Haxa one-trick pony, cuts in off the left and curls into the bottom right. Stop that, you stop him. He's got nothing else. And Polymorphous, Hacksaw talented, can beat a defender with the ball at his feet and a nice dig, deserved more of a chance, but ultimately blew it by being outspoken. Well, we'll see how that goes, and we wish him all the best. At Stoke, thanks everybody for getting involved. It was a great chat with Jerry and Kev, but also 1,000 of you strong in the comments section. There is no favouritism in bringing up comments. It's just sometimes hard to host and bring up comments at the same time. That's all.
He never brings mine up. Don't worry, guys. He never brings mine up. So it's not a favouritism thing.
It's not anything personal. Look, James Love, Yang deserves it. I would agree with that. I think he should get into the team, and I'm pretty sure we've got a player in our hands with Yang as well. Thanks everybody for getting involved. If you want to get involved a wee bit more, come and see us live with Chris Sutton. A few tickets, by the way, they're flying out the door, but there's a few tickets left, and the link is underneath this particular video. All that's left for me to say, Jerry and Kevin, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.